This is not a dream. We are using your brain's electrical system as a receiver. We are unable to transmit through conscious neural interference. You are receiving this podcast as a dream. We are transmitting from the year 2022. You are receiving this podcast in order to understand the social commentary of what you viewed while watching Prince of Darkness. Our technology has developed to a point we could use video, but we choose not to because our co-hosts are lazy. But this is not a dream. You are hearing what is actually occurring for the purpose of killing a couple hours. Welcome to episode 174 of the Necronama.com.
If you're looking to start your own podcast, you should check out Libsyn.com and get up to 2 months of free podcasting service when you use our code NECRO, all caps, NECRO. Libsyn provides you with great customer service and support. They have real-time podcast analytics, free podcast guides and tutorials, and everything else you'll need to get started podcasting today. Go to libsyn.com and enter the promo code NECRO today. And check out the Necronama.com wherever you listen to podcasts. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And I'm not actually here. I'm just a big container of green goo.
And I am Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast that you're listening to. And, I wanted to criticize the grad students for their age. But I can tell you from personal experience, this movie is not that far off.
How's your PhD going, Don?
It's going.
Joining us today, Graham Rowat is here. Did I say your last name correctly?
Yeah, if you have a boat and you row it, that's how we do it.
Perfect.
And I'm really just a pile of beetles in a cheap suit.
Well, we're excited to have you here, man. So
I'm very happy to talk. I don't get to talk about horror movies with folks, and not just any folks, but esteemed, knowledgeable crafters of creepiness like yourselves.
Oh my! What's going on my resume now?
Yeah, they're gonna get that on a shirt.
Crafter of creepiness.
So Graham, why don't you tell our listeners a bit about yourself, man?
Yes. Well, yeah. I when you told me that's what we were going to lead with, I was like, oh, how can I keep this under 5 minutes? I am an actor. I make my living as a professional actor, and that seems like I could just leave it there. But I've done some Broadway shows and some television shows. And during the pandemic, before the pandemic, I had this vocal booth that I set up because I also do audiobooks. And I set up a vocal booth out in my new home when I had room for a vocal booth, and started to do audiobooks from home, which was a great rescue for me during the pandemic when most of the acting opportunities were gone away. Mm-hmm. But I got incredibly busy doing audiobooks. Things were rolling before the pandemic, and then I was just like spending every day here. And I also, the reason I mentioned that is so I'm also an audiobook narrator. And I also used this booth and ventured out to see what else there was, and discovered a lot of amazing creators of scripted audio podcasts. So you can also find me on some great podcasts that people may know, because this is a podcast. So they may already know the No Sleep podcast. They may know the SCP Archives. But I'd also love to, promote some great shows like The Hotel, The Wicked Library, Campfire Radio Theater, The Grey Rooms. I'm actually on more than is probably healthy, but as an actor, I've been very lucky to make a living as an actor, but I've always sort of craved more variety, and I found that the scripted podcasts gave me that. I could in any given week play a number of different crazy characters, and it really sort of is artistically satisfying. And that's, the older I get, that's what I really crave. It was fascinating too, like even before the pandemic, when I discovered there was a whole world of audio drama creators, and that I could just reach out to them, because when you're an actor, you have an agent, and the opportunities that come to you are, I don't want to say gated, but there's a process by which you get an audition. And so there's always things between you and the creators, and you just wait, you're waiting for the phone to ring. And this was a very unique situation where I could get on the interwebs, and I could email one of these creators and say, hey, I think what you do is really cool. Here is my resume. I have a really great audio setup. Maybe we could work together. And, because of the things I had done professionally, I think, and also the nature that a lot of audio drama is like, there's anybody with a mic and a computer can create a podcast. And therefore there's a huge range of abilities. I feel like I was able to come and say, hey, this is what I do. Maybe we should talk. That was under 5. That was we're probably right on 5 there.
Well, I'll just say I didn't give you the time. You did that yourself. So
well, I spend a lot of time alone. So when someone's asked me a question about myself, I can go for a while.
Yeah. Well, let's ask you another question about yourself. Why did you pick this film?
It's funny because I feel like there's a coolness factor, like when you're a kid and you discover a John Carpenter film. For me, it was a VHS tape of probably The Thing, and you're like, this, I don't know what this is, but this looks scary and cool. And whatever this guy does, I became fascinated with John Carpenter movies. And I can't say it was any one thing, because I'm just as much a fan of, Big Trouble in Little China or Escape from New York. So, that's all. I just named 3 Kurt Russell films. So maybe it's just Kurt Russell that I love. But I discovered maybe 10 years ago, I came across an article mentioning John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy. And I had never heard mention of this. And it is The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. And I'd seen The Thing and In the Mouth of Madness, but I'd never heard of Prince of Darkness. And so I had to hunt it out, and then I watched them all together. I was like, there's a weird feeling in where I'm like, this is a cool way to spend your night, and no one can tell me otherwise. And so I don't know. It came along with a feeling of this is a good way to spend a night. And the Prince of Darkness was, I don't know if it's a masterpiece, but I think my favorite genre of horror is smart people getting their asses kicked. And this is a prime example of smart people rolling in with their computers and their cocky, like a half-eaten bagel, and they're shooting the shit about their lives, and then they realize that they should not be there. And I love that.
It's funny that you say that you'd seen the other 2, because we've covered the other 2, and now we're covering this one, because we don't do anything in the right order around here.
No. Well, I feel like the other 2 got a lot more attention.
Yeah. I have this weird thing where I also hadn't heard of the trilogy for a long time. And then when I heard it that way, I was like, they kind of have stuff together, but what? And then it was very much about how they're kind of like pulled away from society and they're in their own places. And then there's cosmic horror kind of involved and all these different things. And I was like, I get that. But being the number one They Live person that I've ever met, I would throw They Live into this because I think that it fits a lot of these very same things. And so then I get confused about what a trilogy is. But I would love to know the reasoning of why they picked the films they do, because I do think that a lot of Carpenter's stuff hits these same notes, you know?
Yeah. What you just then I thought there was an element, as you mentioned the cosmic horror element of these films, and then I thought to myself just earlier today, I'm like, well, wait a minute, because I love cosmic horror, the idea that there's a force outside our universe that doesn't care about us at all, and if we cross paths with it, we lose our minds because it breaks our idea of where we are and where we're living. But in The Thing, it's I just always think of that as like an alien. That's just a bad time with an alien. So I don't know if that so as you say, I hadn't heard about the ideas of the not compartmentalized, but the cut off nature of those three. But that would be another way, as you say, to connect them. And maybe They Live is a little more spread out in terms of, that story is free flowing throughout the city. Whereas, everything else is, the town in, what's the town called in Mouth of Madness? Anyway, that's not the story.
That's certainly not Googling it right now.
No. We're talking about the Prince of Darkness, which is hilarious. I mean, there's so many things.
Because we'd never forget Hobbs End, so we don't need to look it up.
I love that it all takes place at a church in downtown LA, and so it's not out in the middle of the woods. They are not separated from the world, or like they are in downtown LA, and yet they've managed to break it off from the rest of the world in not only with the homeless people sort of surrounding it, but also just I love the exterior shots. Every time there's an exterior shot of the church, and you feel like it's an island and there's no one around. But there was a shot where a truck goes by, and I'm like, look, it's still the world. The world is still there.
Right.
But at the same time, that they can't. The world is not there, and they can't get out. And I love the fact that it's in downtown LA, and yet it's a million miles away.
Yeah, I mean, even if they could get out, they're changed knowing what they know. So,
and what they're experiencing is the beginning of something that would continue to spread. So, even if they got out, it would eventually catch them. But still, if given the choice, I would get out and I would run. And if I had, they're
probably really upset that they were so close to an Alice Cooper concert and then it didn't work out. Don, what do you got?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've got a lot on this, and I can't remember the last time I saw this movie. And before we started, James asked about it holding up. And for me, it doesn't hold. And this is the same complaint I have for Christine. So I don't want anybody to think I'm, saying something about John Carpenter but Stephen King, I saw the same issue with the film adaptation, I should say, not because he wasn't directing it. And it was really with the pacing, where if you take this movie or if you take Christine, either one of those stories, if not both, could be part of a horror anthology, because you can condense it into about 30 to 35 minutes to tell this story and still kind of have that same impact of, you've got this group that's trying to understand what this artifact is and what it means. And you got science versus religion. You've got God versus man, or demon versus man. And so you got all these things that are being thrown around as part of this story. And I think you could have still gotten the same effect of telling the story if it had been much shorter. So my biggest gripe was just the pacing. But what I do have to say is, given the opportunity of this knowledge, like, how would any of you, I guess, would it change your worldview?
Well, specifically the knowledge of which knowledge do you mean exactly?
I mean, as far as like the supernatural and underworld, right. Not necessarily, whether or not Jesus is an alien, but because as soon as you tell anybody something like that, you'd probably under review. Maybe. I mean, because if someone talks about demons this or hell this, you just see that as like, that's some normal shit somebody would say who's of that faith or has that type of religious, religious connection, right?
Right.
But if you come out and you're like, Jesus is an alien, I saw documents that proved it, you're not going to grab that same group of people because they'll be like, look, my shit is crazy. Your shit is like way out of this, no pun intended, out of this world. So
I think it's interesting because the knowledge, because there's so many people in this world who already are not religious, that if I ran out and if I, and this whole team of scientists are being told the idea that that Jesus was an alien, and I think the person who the information really wrecks is Donald Pleasance's priest, and how his whole world is broken apart. But I mean, the scientists, if they came out and they're like, I didn't really believe in any of that anyway, and now I've learned that maybe it wasn't the fiction I thought. It's actually aliens, and I guess that's actually more scientific, actually, in a lot of ways than what they what religion had been presented to them with to begin with. What do you think about? Yeah,
I was going to say, it definitely demonstrates that or it gives you an answer to, is there something else out there?
They all start having dreams. The whole science team start having dreams, and they Donald Pleasance says, tell me what's in your dream. That's what everybody has who guards this container. And then the scientists are like, what if it was something being transmitted back to us from the future? Right. And so it starts adding this time travel dimension, which it comes in halfway through the movie, and it's such like the whole dream thing and the message. I think I wasn't expecting it, but I appreciated. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I guess my problem with it is that they're instantly like, hey, it's this weird thing that no one's ever thought of. And everyone's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then it's right. Yeah. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
But
you're absolutely right.
I think it's really cool though.
Yeah, exactly. It's really cool, but it's really, there was like, what's it? What if it was this? Well, yeah, that's probably what it is. And there's no way that they could just pull that out of the air, but the movie needed them to pull it out of the air.
I don't know. It was one of those things that they could have found evidence for or anything, and it would have made more sense. It could have even been in the book that was left behind or anything like that. I think it would be kind of fun. I'm just spitballing here as I'm thinking about it, but it could have been kind of fun if it was in the notes that the priest had, but he didn't understand it. And then they explained it to him and we're like, whoa, what the hell? But,
And they also they've been translating that ancient book the whole time. So they could probably have had any page, like, what do we need to, what's the next plot reveal? Okay, we'll just put it in the book, and we just translated some Latin, and it talks about transmissions from the future.
I feel like I could have been a more successful writer in the 80s because I wouldn't have had to explain things so much.
Look, all the movies I watched in the 80s, you would be correct, sir.
What did you guys Here's a weird thing that I'm fascinated by. So did you guys watch Simon and Simon growing up?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
My dad always made me watch it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that to this day, I'm sure we can all sing the theme song to Simon and Simon, because
But we're not going to.
That is a kick ass. When that saxophone comes in, go watch it on YouTube. But Jameson Parker, I had to look this up because I was like, okay, that's the guy from Simon and Simon.
Mm-hmm.
Where was he in his career? So this movie came out in 87, and Simon and Simon ran from 81 to 89.
Oh,
so
whoa.
It was 8 years of Simon and Simon, and he was known for Simon and Simon. He's probably, 6 or 7 years into that when he did this.
Huh.
And I find him incredibly interesting to watch. I don't know if I always think that his choices are right in this movie, but he has a way of keeping he's like emotionally detached. He I guess, which works very well for him as a quantum physicist student. But
Yep.
He also, I became fixated on him and his deck of cards.
Yeah.
He's, from the moment we meet him, he's playing with these cards, like trying to work on a magic trick. And then right at the there's this climactic moment where all the scientists have gathered together. They realize their numbers are dwindling, and that maybe there is something that's out to get them. And he's playing with his cards. They've been set this card thing up, and he moves the card from the front of his hand to the back, and then they cut the shot to the back of his hand, and the card is gone.
Yeah.
So it's as though he was supposed to perform a card trick, and maybe the actor, couldn't get it. So okay, we're just going to cut the shot, and it'll look like you did I don't know what that moment was, because it seemed as though it was a decisive, whether it was proof of something magical was going down. I don't know what it was. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah, no, it drove me crazy. I was like, why did you have all this buildup for this trick? And then one, like you said, you don't even show it. Like, I mean, it doesn't look right. And then
did he successfully do it? Or did the card disappear and he was like, wait a minute, where'd the card go? We're in trouble. Like, I don't know what that was.
I really felt like, was there like some deleted scene that I needed for this to make sense? Don, what you got?
No, I just thought about it the same way that we tried to process Poltergeist, of where they are in the kitchen and then there's that and they're all of a sudden at a motel, and you're like, what? Did I get a bootleg copy of this movie? It was just something that was like, they just decided to go stay at a hotel.
Well, I know,
totally
and also
forgot about the weird cut in Poltergeist. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
Well, the card disappeared, and then he sort of looked at them all, and he said something to the effect of, well, then it's time for us to, prove that we belong here, or something. There was a very determined statement to rouse them all, but it was like connected to the card disappearing. And it was so, I would love to know more about what that was.
It was just it was a man who finally did the trick he wanted to do, so now he was ready to help others.
That's right.
No longer distracted.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
He could focus on their impending doom. Also, they really wanted to get him together with it was I guess the character's name was Catherine.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Catherine.
And they so pushed them. Well, they pushed him on her in a really aggressive way.
Yes.
And he came off as a bit of an asshole. And she's like, oh no, no, I don't like you. And then he's like, hey, come on, let's start again. Maybe I could take you out to dinner. and she accepted his new approach as being better or something. And
I guess he's changed.
Yeah, he did not change at all. And then they needed to get them into bed fast because they needed there later on to be some stakes,
Right.
and a love story. And there actually was a moment when I actually thought, okay, I'm glad that was set up as ham-fisted as it was, because there is that sort of moment before the final act where she's scared and they're together. I'm like, okay, this is better than not having that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's weird to me though, because like as a writer, I'm sitting here going, why don't you just have them already dating?
Or married?
That's a great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no reason that they're not. Like nothing would really change that much in the script. Like even if you did it for the sex scene,
Right.
I've heard married people can still have sex. So, it's just such a weird choice to me. And then also, like, he's kind of a creepy ass stalker before he even talks to her.
Yes.
And I was like, that never comes up again. But I was like, what was the point of that?
Yeah. He was waiting out. She goes into the bookstore and he waits outside until she comes out, and then she has a guy waiting for her, and he's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. I guess
Yeah,
I'll go.
I wrote down on my notes, college version of Ned Flanders. No booty for you, Mr. Stalker guy. So, boy, was I wrong in my notes, because he eventually avenged that.
But
He's like, I've been on TV for 7 seasons. I'm getting some.
Maybe that's what it was. Jameson Parker didn't remember how to be in a relationship. No, I don't know.
He's got. My name is 2 last names. I can do anything I want.
But no, I think that would, like, if they'd been dating, and then I think that makes the ending stronger too. Like I would really buy more that he was in love with her, and this terrible tragedy happened. Instead, I'm like, you got Romeo and Juliet, except you didn't even kill yourself, like, so.
I look at it this way. I'm sure he was thinking to himself, like, I was really looking for a way to get out of that relationship, because we slept together and she asked me, what are we? And I didn't have an answer. So I've had to see her every day. We've been doing research, and thank goodness for the demon mirror.
Thank God thank God this church had the largest mirror in Los Angeles. Was that the boiler room that had a giant mirror?
Why wouldn't it be there?
Just where are we going to put this giant mirror? I don't know. Just put it in the boiler room.
It's so odd. But
I do love that idea that the idea that she is now lost in a terrible place, then can't get out. Well, but of course we answer that in the post credit scene. So right, sorry, I was just thinking to myself, I do love that feeling of utter never ending horror that he would feel, knowing that she was, forever trapped in a terrible place of horror and agony. But I guess that doesn't last long for the audience, because then we get the final payoff for those transmissions, which again were so bizarre and weirdly weird sci-fi element that I was equally as confusing but also fascinated by. I'm babbling now.
No, I don't know how you can't. Like, that's part of my problem with this movie. I feel like you kind of have to babble while trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies where, like, as I'm watching it, everything's great and makes total sense. And I'm like, wow, that was cool. And then like 5 minutes later, I'm like, wait a minute, none of that made sense.
I just want another scientist to go, has anyone seen Donna? And then I'm going to go off alone to see if I can find him. those are my secret moment. Like I love every time someone goes, "Have you seen so and so?" No, I think they left. Oh, okay. And they don't. There's nothing more pleasurable than all of the signs and signals that are signs and signals that they're completely missing, and maybe that means you value them less as people because they're dumb. But it's so delicious to see it all happening and they're oblivious.
No,
there's also
go ahead.
There's also the aspect of genre too. So whenever I watch a movie and I start to go like, oh, this wouldn't happen, or this person would say this, I immediately am reminded of a quote I heard probably within the last couple of years, which was, "Your characters don't know what genre they're in." So I could completely see someone, hey, have you seen Karen? Oh, she probably went outside for a cigarette, or she went out, because there are no signs that something bad is going on.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Because I like to think if somebody I was working with immediately left and I didn't see him and I knew we were working on something, be like, no, that's kind of fucked up. You left to go get a cigarette, or you went to, if you didn't come back in a certain period, I'd be sitting there thinking like, why am I doing all the work here?
It's also fascinating that in today's day and age we would just text them,
right?
And they can't. And we were, that movie was in a time when if someone left for the night, you really had no way of knowing if that was true or not. If someone goes, I think they took off, that would be pretty much like, I guess that's what they did.
That's true. And then you're just like, dick, I'm going to take this up with you tomorrow.
Exactly.
But that's it. Yeah.
And there's not going to, but then as the viewer's like, there's not going to be it tomorrow. There's not going to be.
I will say they should have figured out what genre they were in. I mean, Satan's there, and there's like these zombie homeless people outside, and
and then there's the obviously the other John Carpenter staple, Dennis Dunn, as he was in a comedy.
He definitely was.
He was definitely in a comedy. And this
Where
was
you at? I'm in the closet.
This is after Big Trouble in Little China, I believe. I'm pretty sure I got that right. And I thought he was so charming in Big Trouble in Little China, and the true hero of that movie. But in this, I couldn't get behind him. Maybe it was because he was, every story needs someone to bring some levity, and so maybe he just had a hard lift with everything else that was going on.
I don't know if it's true, but what I read, and I'm sure anybody else would know, but I didn't do extensive research, but it was that Big Trouble, it failed. And so he went back to doing what he knew, and that's why he made this film.
Oh, that's...
And so he pulled
when you say he, you mean Carpenter.
Right, Carpenter,
right.
Yeah. And so he pulled a lot of the cast over for this as well. Or the crew, or one of those. I don't know. I read it a few weeks ago, but yeah.
That makes sense.
I haven't seen that movie in so long that I couldn't even tell you who's in it, so...
I have a giant poster on my outside this booth that I'm in, and I love that movie. But there are movies that are touchstones, but I still haven't watched it in probably 5 years. But I own like 8 copies. But yeah, The more I think about it, the more I think about how Kurt Russell was just a bumbling fool. But when I was a kid and watched that movie, he was amazing. But anyway. What did you guys think of Bug Frank?
I thought he was cool looking.
For me, this was the moment when the scientists finally knew they were in the shit. And that was that was satisfying to a degree, because they finally had to realize that all of this sort of all these people who might have just gone home for the night, something else had gone on and they were in trouble. And I do love it when it shifts into another mode of like, oh, when the scientists finally realize they're in deep doo-doo.
I mean, when you see a bug full of a soup full of bugs, limbs start falling off and the head pops off. It's definitely gonna make you start thinking that something is not going to happen good to you at that point.
Imagine if they'd looked a little bit later, like he would have already fallen apart. They would have had no idea what's happening.
I can't remember if he called. No, they don't. That's the other thing, is he didn't call to them. Someone just looked out the window and they're like, "Wait, is that Frank?" Which, of course, I love moments like that where it's not like Frank was like, "Hey guys, what do you want, Frank?" It's just that he was just sitting there,
right,
waiting. What do you guys think of? So I read somewhere that I love the Carpenter, and I want to make sure I got this right, because he didn't do the scores completely by himself. There's another gentleman who worked with him whose name is Alan Howarth. And so the score is kind of constant through the whole movie. And I love the way it makes me it's always sort of pulsing and in a minor key, making me feel uncomfortable. And I think I read somewhere though that someone eventually got really tired of it. And I don't know if I ever do get tired of that. How about you guys?
I mean, that's just part of Carpenter for me. The score is always a character in itself. But Don?
No, I was gonna say, when it works, it works. I can't think of a film that I watched of his where the score didn't carry some type of motion or have some type of effect. Mm-hmm. I would have to go back and, you know what? I take it back. They Live. Sorry, James. But then again,
I challenge you to a fight in an alley.
I watched this movie 30 years before you ever did, so
that's true. This was my first time seeing Prince of Darkness. I don't think I mentioned that.
Oh, wow.
Oh. I had my kids sit down and she watched They Live with me. And kind of like what I've been doing with her with a lot of horror movies lately, just like easing her into different types of horror. And then we have a conversation about it, or I answer questions that she has while we watch the movie. So when Nada's character is like walking through the streets early on, and then of course after he can now see, it's like that same tone or that same tune is playing. And so I'm like, I want to see a different type of tone with the way the music is heading, as opposed to kind of that relaxed beat. Like, this should have been a moment where you had some type of panicky music that was playing, or confused. But no, I mean, that's the only movie I can think of, and I love They Live.
It's been a while since I've seen that. I'd like to watch that again. Do you think, sidebar, do you think John Carpenter offered They Live to Kurt Russell?
I would think that he did, but I don't know.
I wonder. I think there must have been a conversation. Not that it didn't end up the way it was meant to be. I just can't help but think, with all the times they worked together, that must have come up.
Probably didn't want to wear the glasses.
Now, I wouldn't say that I just Googled it, but he did have Kurt Russell in mind while writing the role of Nada.
There you go.
Google should be a sponsor of our show, because I'm constantly like, I don't know, let me look it up.
I love that you have a quiet keyboard too, because I think if you would hear anything I Googled right now.
I usually mute my mic when I do it. There you go, people. Now you get all the behind the scenes facts here.
What do you think about? I love that there was a woman, a PhD student,
mm-hmm.
who she joined the crew. Like, we were introduced to our main group of students, and then when it was time to go to the church, they introduced a handful of other students. Some of them just showed up in front of the church,
Mhm.
And one of them, I think her name was Susan, who she maybe gets 3 or 4 lines, and then she becomes the embodiment of evil. And I was thinking to myself, what would it be like to be like, okay, so your role, thank you for coming in today. Your lines are great. You did a great job on the lines. Here's what we're going to need you to do. Are you allergic? Do you have any skin allergies? Because we are going to, for most of this movie, we're going to turn you into a hell vomit spraying demon woman. And I thought, wow, that's got to be what an interesting job she had. And I don't know if it was fun, but she didn't get to say much, but she was going around that church killing people and spraying in their mouths. And I don't know if that was a good job or a bad job.
I was just amazed, like, how I've changed since the pandemic, because I was like, this is a scene that wouldn't have creeped me out pre-pandemic. And now the idea of spitting in someone's mouth creeps me out really bad. Yeah.
I love how every time someone sprayed, I think the first time it came from the container.
It came from the goo.
Mm-hmm.
From the goo. But I loved how they needed the goo to get in the person's mouth. And so the actor or actress, they had to make it seem natural that something was sprayed at them, and they, in their horror, sort of opened their mouth to it. Whereas I think if anything, like if something flies up towards your eye, your body will shut that eye before it reaches you. Mm-hmm. But this movie needed everyone to work against that instinct and needed them to be shocked and aghast and just take a big drink. And I don't know if that entirely would really happen, but I thought they sold it. The actors sold it well. I'm like, okay, you got your spray, you got your goo.
I mean, it's the anti-god, so he can just make you do that. It's fine.
Right. Like it might taste really good. What if the anti-god is like, it's Dr. Pepper?
That's obviously Baja Blast.
Oh man.
I guess you also have the comparison to accepting the communion as far as I mean that was the only other thing I thought. I was like, well, maybe it's the same setup in communion as far as like you're drinking from the chalice or whatever and accepting the blood of Christ, and here you are accepting the goo of I don't know what alien planet that one had come from. I mean, if they're supposed to be opposites from each other, are they actually coming from the same planet or a multiverse? I don't know.
It's like Megamind and Metro Man.
Yes, the good people of Metrocity.
Do you think if some sort of nostalgia company were to create every time they would cut away to that giant container, I don't want to say container anymore. That's not what it was, but the giant demon cylinder. No, that doesn't work. But don't you think that would be the best, like, accent lighting if someone were to make a recreation? I mean, I could go to Etsy right now and it might exist. But if I would, in a heartbeat, buy a lamp that was a swirling green liquid of that demon prison. Yeah,
it could be like a lava lamp meets.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think it would be great. I love stuff like that.
Oh,
so
the way that thing spun around.
Adding that it's from a movie would just make it even better for me. So
yeah, I just don't know if there are enough fans to make it worthwhile. But gosh,
well, I mean, maybe Alice Cooper has a replica of it at his house.
I could ask him.
What's your take on that alleyway? I was because I love the idea of like, okay, why don't you just leave?
Mhm.
Just leave. And there was something really cool about, I don't know, it's not cool, but the side alley of the building where you couldn't get out. You got out, you came out the window. Well, first off, we had the first guy who went down that alley and got stabbed by Alice Cooper with a bike.
Right.
That's a pretty interesting kill.
Yeah. What am I gonna kill him with? What about this bike? Oh, it's got two wheels. No, we can take care of that. Well, we're gonna bust off one of the wheels, and it's just gonna have a pointy piece of metal. Oh, I know. When he dies, he'll sort of lean forward so that the bike supports him, and he's still like
he becomes a human kickstand.
Yeah,
such a great shot.
It was such a great, but I can't. I would love to know how they came up with. But later on, Jameson Parker he climbs out the window, goes down into that little side alley, and within 60 seconds climbs back in.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know. I on one hand, I appreciate the reinforcement of the threat. You've got to constantly remind people why they're not leaving. But at the same time, I'm like, well, you could have hopped over the next fence and just kept.
That's what I said when I was watching it.
All I said watching that scene, I was like, now that's some Simon and Simon shit right there.
He looks like he could jump the next fence and keep going, but that's okay.
I was fascinated. I want to know, like, how widespread was this? Because, like you said, the world keeps going. So, like, is Satan or the anti-god or son of anti-god or whatever he is, like, did he just build like a perimeter and he's got these guards that he found nearby? Is that what's going on here? I don't know.
I think there's an area of effect that feels right. Although they do a good, they really make sure to establish in the beginning of the movie these weird swarms of ants on campus, or the swarm that's on the back of Jameson Parker's television, which are incredibly creepy. But I have no idea. Like, well, wait a minute. What's if this anti-god's over in the church? What is he doing over here?
See, this is what I mean. I'm trying too hard with my books. I gotta just throw shit in just to be creepy.
Yeah. And
just when people go, why is that there? I'll say, because John Carpenter did it and it was fucking awesome. So just deal with it. See? I'm gonna start doing that.
Got to do that.
It couldn't hurt. This is me as being a Reformed Catholic, or as George Carlin said, a Catholic in recovery. So my question is, whenever we see these films, it seems like we get an overload with the church being connected to demonic possession and, exorcisms and haunted houses and all this other stuff, or just fighting demonic beings. For me, the one thing I noticed was if the Catholic Church had anything to do with this, there would have been a much bigger team and they would have been much quieter about what they were doing. Mm-hmm. But why do we always kind of see the church or religion itself as the good guy?
Marketing.
No. What I mean, as far as like us as audience members, we immediately are like, they are the good guys in this story. I shouldn't question whether or not they are. And we've seen so many times where the Catholic Church in a film like this, they're hiding the secret because they can cause more pain with whatever it is. But we often fall right into that trap of like, okay, you're setting it up as far as good versus bad, Christ versus Antichrist, anti-God, whatever. And then you've also got good versus evil, and you've got the church versus, I wouldn't even say paganism, but the church against non-believers or heretics. But we go in immediately giving them that credit that they're doing the right thing.
Or at least think they are, yes.
Right. Or at least think they are, but why as an audience member would we fall quickly into that, or did either one of you fall into that, as opposed to questioning what the hell's this father really, or what the hell's the church really up to?
Well, I feel like I still do have the knee jerk response of, well, that's our good guy. That's our representative. That's our true north. But it was enjoyable to watch him. I mean, I think that must have been attractive to Donald Pleasance as an actor because here's a guy who comes into the movie at the top of the movie. He's a very, very confident and sure of his place in the world, and all of it is torn away from him, and he becomes such a the person he's at the end. He's terrified of what's going on around him, and he doesn't entirely have anything to fall back on because he's discovered that the church has been lying to him for all these years. So he's a man in the broom closet. That's not what it was. With his Bible, desperate to find something to hang on to. And what I love is at the end, there's that at the end, he's like, well, that it worked. We did it. And it's good. We've saved the day. And you can tell he's trying to find something to hold on to. I find his journey is probably one of the most interesting. But yeah, in terms of, I don't know if I necessarily felt I initially do feel that the church is usually the force of good in these sort of situations, but not this guy. This guy was a mess. He was a hot mess.
One of the things I like most about this film is that you have the science side and you have the religion side, but it's not moving towards the middle to find common ground. It's this whole other thing over on this other spectrum. And it's both of them dealing with what they're finding, and obviously that's going to affect the religious side harder because the science side just goes, that's what we do. Now I have to figure this out. But I love how we have these two things so that when they encounter this thing, they come at it from what should be opposing views. And instead it's just, wow, what do we do? How do we work together? Here's what you're bringing. Here's what I'm bringing. And let's just get to work. And holy shit, we could use that in society. And
also that he came into it and he had his whole world turned upside down. The scientists came into it and they were like, oh yeah, this is crazy, but science still applies. Our rules are, oh no, but wait. No, their professor did say, what if everything is not what we thought? And what if, so maybe their science was upended a little bit, but I do like, you're right. Even when the priest was all beaten up, he did have information that he could share with the scientists to try and help them as much as the information sort of was continuing to prove that his faith was over or ended or based on lies.
Well, the speech you're talking about with the teacher, like that is in a way not a definitive one, but it's sort of a definition of cosmic horror. It's accepting that nothing we think is where it is.
Right.
And like time doesn't exist the way we think, and any absolute is just gone. Like if you go deep enough into that, you're going to go crazy, which is cosmic horror.
Right. Although I don't know if I think that if he said that speech off the top and I was like, what are we doing? But you're right. That is cosmic horror. I just was like, if I was in a class, if I was paying thousands of dollars to be in a class in a college setting and I was already in my 40s, as most of those actors seem to be, and someone was like, I'm your teacher, what if this? I'd be like, I'm out. I need my money back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and also just well, then when we take a test, I better get an A because nothing matters. So it doesn't matter what I write.
All I gotta say is this: the Catholic Church better pay off every last one of them handsomely, just for putting them through that, and then also for, at least from what they understood, saving their asses at that moment.
I love there was the shot. First off, I loved how the before the final showdown, the sun rose, which is just a little thing that a little touch that I appreciated, because usually everything goes down at night. But I also loved at the very end, Dennis Dunn's character. You just see him, scurrying out the side window and running away down the street, and I'm like, I thought that was going to be his exit. But thankfully, the next shot has him with the police, and he's got a blanket around. I'm like, oh, he went to get the police. But it was such a moment of like, oh God, I'm gone. I'm out. Fuck you.
That would be me, just making a break for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kidding. They would have killed me right away. I would have probably been the one drinking the fluid at the beginning.
Dipping your finger in the goo.
Yeah.
What is this?
It does taste like Dr. Pepper. Amazing.
This is Baja Blast. How many people survive in
I
this?
think it was 4. Because you got the priest, the professor, Pleasant, Pleasant's character, and Walter survived. So there's 4.
4 men, and all the ladies, and one of them became, took all the goo, and looked like she was about to have a baby, but she didn't have a baby, but all her skin fell off.
I totally thought that was like I said, this was my first time watching it. I totally thought this was like a setup for giving birth to the anti-god.
Yeah.
So when it didn't happen, I was like, what the hell? Why?
Yeah. I guess they
just like the sun
put
that
all
you
the
were
goo
talking
in
about.
her, and then she had to sort of, absorb it. It took time to absorb.
Like the sun you were talking about. Like they did this whole thing with the crescent moon right over the sun, so it gave it like devil horns, and I thought this was going somewhere, and then nothing.
I mean, Satan, the anti-god did come back. It just didn't. It just can't. It just was her. Maybe they were like, John, I know we just shot the whole distended belly thing, but the animatronic baby we've got is doesn't look good. It's broken. There's a moment too where Walter is trapped in the closet, and he's been watching he's been stuck in that closet for hours, and he's watching the woman who has absorbed all of the anti-god juice. And I love it. She sort of, her eyes open, and her first demonic act is to make some of the cots jump. and that's enough to make him like, that's his breaking point. After all of that, he's like, you gotta get me out of here. But those cots she moved them with her mind.
There's women bouncing beds. I'm out of here. I'm in the closet, damn it.
I've run out of bad jokes. I'm glad.
All right.
Yeah.
This is a question I always have with something like this. And it's basically, if your god, demigod, demon, whatever, was this powerful, is the way it's always described, why the fuck do they need your help?
Well, this anti-god was imprisoned, right? But also, why was the canister locked from the inside?
That was weird.
So my first statement would be, he needs your help because he has been he was trapped or encaged by Jesus, and the Catholic Church has been keeping watch over it and keeping him imprisoned. And then I guess with the death of the priest at the very beginning of the movie, that maybe he's been growing stronger, and the priest was the last line of defense, and now. But then I don't get why it was locked on the inside. They said that a couple times, and I don't get why.
I don't know either. I think it was just like no human could let him out, and they just didn't think about the insanity of what this would mean, Yeah. I don't know. It feels like just bad writing. Like,
does that work for you, Don? The idea that it needs help because it was.
No, damn it.
No, doesn't work for you.
No, it's one of those things that I always bring up, and I saw a video earlier today where they were doing a skit, and it was their friend or their mom or whatever coming to them and saying like, "Oh, God's been sending me a lot of tests," and the response from the person is something like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Well, my mom died the other day, and I broke my ankle yesterday, and my guinea pig has scoliosis." And God just keeps giving me all these tests. And the guy said, well, what are these tests supposed to do? Oh, they're going to make me a stronger person. And as part of the skit, the guy says, if he's that powerful, why can't he just make you stronger, just like he made all those tests for you? And the person's like, well, that's not how it works. And that's what I see, at least with a lot of the religious discussion that takes place and a lot of the religious examples. It's almost kind of the same thing. Like, it doesn't need to make sense to you. It makes sense to the characters in the film. And we, even when it comes to the religious explanation of what the priest is telling them, he can make it make sense to them, but us as viewers, especially if we're looking at this film 35 years on, we're definitely going to look at it with different eyes. Going to have a lot more of a critical lens when talking about the dialogue, the way the film appears, as opposed to what someone would have felt in '87 when they saw this. Or the same thing with The Exorcist, because we can easily look back at that and question so many things about the movie. Like, why does he still end up falling to his death on the stairs at the end of the movie? I thought they got rid of him. I thought the thing was only contained to that girl, and they were able to get it out, and it needed another host. But again, you just have to explain it in those terms as far as religion itself, and you don't necessarily need to have some strong, highly cited reason or researched reason to determine why something was the way it was. But I will say this, and I told James this before this show, if the priest, kind of like with these grad students, if I were one of the grad students working on this, and the priest had come forward and said the things about the evils in the world and Jesus being an alien, all these other things, I would have had a reaction that would not have been very positive for the priest. Probably would have been a lot of laughing about it. Probably would have been some comments about he needs to stop drinking the wine before communion. But I wish that the students were a little bit more critical of him. But again, that's a 2022 lens looking back at this film from '87. Mm-hmm. When that's something you're going to see more often in movies now, where you're going to have that cynical scientist or that confrontational character that is going to question either the science of something or the religious aspect of it. It'd be interesting to see how they would explain it away.
They're still gonna, when Bug Frank comes along, that Bug Frank is still gonna make him believe, but they're gonna probably be hanging on to their cynicism longer till they run into the suit full of bugs.
I would definitely agree.
Yeah, this whole movie felt like a whole bunch of things thrown at the wall, but enough of them were, it may not have made a lot of sense, but it had so many, for me, exciting and creepy and ominous pieces that I was willing to just go along and ride with it. And that, you're right, it feels like that was part of the time they were in, of the time of making movies back in 1987. And I know, I mean, I would, so when that movie came out, yeah, we all watched this later, much later than 87. I don't think any of us were going, I mean, yeah, I was old enough to go see movies then, but I wouldn't have gone to see this. This would have been, I'm sure my parents probably wouldn't let me do that. You know, I love an underground chamber that's got like 100 lit candles. And anytime you come into a room in a movie where there's 100 lit candles, you're like, who lit those candles?
That's always crazy.
Yeah, that's where my brain goes, because like they weren't just lit; they aren't everlasting candles.
Right.
Well, and even all the crucifixes, my first thought was like picturing the crew trying to get enough crucifixes for this scene. Like, where did they go? Like, what kind of stores did they wipe out? Like, I don't know. It's crazy. You couldn't go on Amazon and order 900 crucifixes, you know?
Or if there was a way to just like, you know what? They're 2 sticks. Get 2 sticks and just, you know, staple gun them together and you got a cross. God damn it, Kenny. Because we're going to go to the movie recommendations.
All right. So this is the part where you tell us movies they should watch if they liked this film. And Graham, you're the guest, so you get to go first.
Oh, gosh. Well, obviously, The Thing and In the Mouth of Madness. This makes me want to, talking to you guys, I want to go watch They Live. In terms of, you know what, I should have been better prepared for this, but obviously, so this is you know what, here it is. So I on one hand, this is a debate between religion and science, but because I love scientists getting their asses kicked, I would recommend on Shudder. My recent thing that I watched was Haunted Asylum.
Okay.
On Shudder, and I came across it, and it's exactly what I wanted. It's people going into a place they shouldn't go, but they don't believe, and then they get their asses handed to them. And I recommend Haunted Asylum on Shudder.
This is weird, but this is the double feature I actually did, and it was weird how much they had in common. The new Hellraiser. I watched the new Hellraiser directly after watching this, and it was just little things. It wasn't like the overall story, but like fluid moving up because instead of like dripping down, because, you know, it comes out of the container and goes up to the ceiling. And in Hellraiser, that happened as well. And just a couple other like little tiny things, but it's not so much that they have a lot in common as much as I just really enjoyed the two together. So that's my double feature.
Have you folks, sorry, we're gonna keep recommending, but I'm just curious, are you doing you are doing Hellraiser? That's coming up.
It's next week. It's our Halloween episode.
Great. Okay, with Haley, that's great. Good, because I'm gonna tune in because I watched it and I have never watched a Hellraiser movie. So anyway, good. I'm gonna listen to you guys talk about it next week. Don.
All righty. Well, James and Graham, you both took several of my movies, but I've still got like 84 left. So Big Trouble in Little China, to have that connection. Reanimator, Dracula, as far as Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one with Keanu. The Gate, People Under the Stairs, House. James is going to love this pick. Society.
You know, that just flows into Haley being here next week, because anyone who follows Haley on Twitter knows all about her obsession with Society. So
I don't know Society.
Oh, man. At all?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
No, I've never even heard of it.
We'll talk later.
All right. All right, so down.
Creep Shows 1 and 2, Stigmata, and I put on here anything John Carpenter, The Fly, and Halloween.
Except for maybe Escape from LA.
Oh, we don't talk about that movie.
We don't. We really don't.
I saw it in theaters when it was released.
I think I did too.
I left so confused, upset, angry, sad. Steve Buscemi was great in it.
I forgot about him.
Graham, if you watch Society, go in completely blind, because I want to know what you think.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never even heard of it. That's great. When I sit down with a couple hours free and I turn and I'm in the taste for something scary, I love the comfort of a zombie movie, and I'm looking for some zombie films that perhaps I recently, it was like 2 months ago, but I watched The Sadness on Shudder,
Okay.
which,
Oh man.
yeah, that was a ride, and was sort of right up my alley, although it was a lot. Do you guys have any good?
There was a Korean one I watched a little while ago. #Alive.
Yep, that was good.
Have you seen that? Okay.
Yep. We might encounter a couple I've seen, but if you ever get some, and listeners, feel free to reach out to me at Graham NY on Twitter and give me your zombie recommendations.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to lean more towards fun zombies, so it may not be as up your alley, but one of the ones I really liked that I watched in the last year was Life After Beth. And it was Aubrey Plaza becoming, like, she rises from the dead. And then her boyfriend is like, very concerned. And her parents are like, no, everything's fine. Just back off. And I don't know. I don't want to tell you anything else because that's enough for the setup. But I really enjoyed it. But I'm a huge Aubrey fan. And I'm a huge, it's not even quite comedic, but it's pretty close. I don't know.
I'm going to say the movie that I was thinking of stars Lupita Nyong'o, and it is on, I think I saw that it was on Prime, and it came out in the last year, and she plays a teacher on a class trip. I don't know if the kids turn into zombies but it sounded like it would be fun, and I just wanted someone to see if anyone had watched it. Little Monsters.
Yes. I totally loved it. It was it's kind of like Zombieland in the humor, but not as constant.
And Josh Gad, so that should be.
He's great because he's a total dick in it, and he hates kids.
That sounds perfect.
I'm like, look at Olaf over here hating children. Jeez.
What do you guys do when you fire up Shudder? Do you browse what's new? Do you go to a particular genre?
Oh,
I've had Shudder for probably about 5 or 6 months, and I always sort of fire it up like it's on my panel of apps on my Apple TV, and like, it's my time, and I'm going to go to that app that no one else goes to. And I'm going to fire it up, and I'm going to see the things that my son will never see. And then I just kind of run out of steam because I'm like, I don't know. I realized I watched, The Virus 32 was a zombie movie on Shudder that I enjoyed. And
I haven't seen that one.
It's pretty good. I think it's from the streets of Montevideo. It is a Spanish film. And it was very good. And the catch is that after a zombie, one of these people with the virus, after they commit violence, there are 32 seconds when they are dormant.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. And they figure that out, and they try to use that. Anyway, sorry, I'm babbling.
No, you're good.
Back.
and Graham, the movie is Doomsday. I don't know why because I'm thinking, like, it's not Doomsday. That's too obvious of an apocalypse type movie to be the title. But it's basically like an infection, and some of the people become cannibals. It's basically they use Hadrian's Wall to separate Great Britain. So anyone who was not infected stays to the south, and anyone who was infected is in the north. But then all of a sudden, like, they're starting to notice that there are infections in the south, and they send this special forces person to basically go get the research from the other side, or the cure that someone was working on the other side, because that was the only place they could find people who were infected.
That's great.
But
I recognize this artwork, but I've never. So I've seen the poster, and I've never. But thank you. Now I can add that to a list of things to watch. Have either of you watched Blood Quantum?
No, but I put it on my queue.
Yeah,
And it's almost the holidays, so let's mention my favorite zombie movie ever, Anna and the Apocalypse. It's a zombie movie, Christmas movie, and a musical. How could I not love it?
Hey, yeah, if any of your listeners are in New Jersey and want to come see me play Captain Von Trapp this Christmas, you can come to the Paper Mill Playhouse, where I'll be singing Edelweiss 8 times a week.
Nice. And where can they find you on social media?
There you go. Graham NY on Twitter and G Rowat, GROWAT on Instagram.
Sweet.
And, thank you for letting me mention that. 2 other things I randomly wanted to say was there was another podcast creator who named Jonathan Winstead, and he's really cool. We did a zombie podcast, scripted audio drama called Savage Waking, and if you go on your podcatcher and look up Invictum, Savage Waking, some combination of those words, Invictum, you'll find it. And I wanted to mention that because I think of all these great creators who are trying to get their stuff out and get heard, and he's a real cool guy.
I love it.
Oh, and guys, so I've narrated more than like 100 audiobooks. And I don't ever have much control over what these companies I work with offer me to do. And I keep thinking to myself, what I would love to do is narrate horror fiction because I think I have a moderate fan base in the audio drama horror genre. And I'm like, why can't I bring these 2 worlds together? Wouldn't that be great synergy? So I'm just putting it out there here for you and whoever might be listening who are authors who want to turn their horror authors who want to turn their books into audiobooks. So I think I love that. I think it's a great idea. But the companies, the audiobook stuff, they're like, here's a book for you. I'm like, great, thanks. And if the one company I said, I don't know a lot of horror podcasts. And they said, well, it's up to the author. I'm like, well, all right. It could be a good idea.
All right. I guess that wraps it up for another week. Graham, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
All right. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I am Don Guillory.
And we'll see you next week here at thenecronoma.com.